There comes a moment in life when you realize that the greatest battles are not fought with swords, guns, or fists. They are fought in silence, in discipline, in the places where no one else can see you but God. The war is not always against people, but against your own mouth, your own mood, and your own mind. If you cannot conquer what is within you, you will forever be enslaved by what is around you. Your mouth has the power to shape worlds. It has the power to build up or to tear down. One word can break a relationship. One sentence can close a door. One careless phrase can poison a lifetime of trust. That is why wisdom tells us that life and death are in the power of the tongue. How many times have opportunities slipped away, not because you weren't qualified, not because you weren't talented, but because your mouth moved before your mind engaged? There are some doors you prayed for that never opened because your tongue betrayed your destiny. You don't always have to say everything you think. You don't always have to respond to everything you hear. Sometimes silence is strength. Sometimes restraint is wisdom. The strongest man is not the one who can strike the hardest blow, but the one who can bite his tongue and walk away from foolishness. And then there is your mood. Oh, how dangerous it is to be ruled by feelings. Your mood can make you a prisoner in your own house. Your mood can make you sabotage blessings that were sent to lift you higher. Feelings are temporary, but decisions made in those feelings can have permanent consequences. You cannot afford to let anger write your story. You cannot afford to let bitterness decide your future. You cannot afford to let discouragement steal your tomorrow. If you wait until you feel like being disciplined, you'll never change. If you wait until you feel like forgiving, you'll never heal. Maturity is when you rise above your mood and live by principle. Discipline is when you say, I will not be governed by how I feel, but by what I know is right. And then, the greatest battlefield of all, the mind. Your mind is the control center of your life. If the enemy can capture your mind, he doesn't need to touch your body. He doesn't need to touch your finances. He doesn't need to touch your relationships. If he has your mind, he has you. That's why your thoughts are so important. A negative thought, if entertained long enough, will build a prison with no bars and no chains, and you'll live your life locked inside of it. But a disciplined mind can turn chaos into clarity. A renewed mind can turn fear into courage. A guarded mind can walk in storms and still speak peace. Control your mouth, your mood, and your mind, and you will master yourself. Because you cannot conquer the world until you first conquer you. And when you conquer you, no gossip can derail you, no mood swing can stop you, and no thought can imprison you. Your destiny is too precious to be wasted on careless words, fleeting feelings, and undisciplined thoughts. There is a reason the mouth has to be brought under control, because the mouth is a doorway to destiny. The words you speak are not just sounds that disappear into the air. They are seeds planted in soil of your life. Every conversation you have, every response you give, every declaration that rolls off your tongue is shaping the harvest you will live in tomorrow. It is easy to underestimate the power of words because they come so naturally, but what comes easily can also destroy quickly. Danger is not in what others say about you, but in what you keep saying about yourself. Too many people curse their future without realizing it. They speak defeat, and then wonder why they never see victory. They speak limitation, and then wonder why they never see progress. They allow frustration to dictate their sentences, and then those sentences imprison them in cycles they can never seem to break. When you do not learn to control your mouth, you give power to emotions that are temporary, but can create consequences that are permanent. You can lose respect with a single careless word. You can damage a relationship with a single angry outburst. You can close a door that was meant to elevate you simply because your tongue got ahead of your wisdom. There are seasons where silence is the only language wisdom speaks. Sometimes it is not your talent or intelligence that determines the outcome, but your ability to stay quiet when your flesh wants to explode. You do not have to answer every insult. You do not have to argue every point. You do not have to prove yourself in every conversation. When you master the art of restraint, you reveal a strength that is greater than any outward display of power. The mouth not only affects relationships but also spiritual progress. What you confess with your lips becomes a mirror of what you believe in your heart. If your mouth is full of negativity, your spirit will be starved of hope. If your mouth constantly magnifies the problem, your faith will shrink under the weight of fear. But if your mouth speaks life, encouragement, and expectation, your soul will be strengthened for the battles ahead. This is why you must guard your speech. Every word is a tool that can build or a weapon that can wound. Some of the wounds people carry into adulthood are not from physical blows, but from sharp words that cut deeper than any knife. To control your mouth is to protect others, but it is also to protect yourself. Think about how many situations in your past spiraled out of control simply because of something that was said. In the heat of the moment, anger opened your lips, but regret followed behind. Frustration shaped your words, but consequences lasted longer than the feelings. That is why discipline must govern the tongue. The tongue is small, but its impact is enormous. It is like the rudder of a ship, tiny compared to the vessel, yet it controls the direction of the entire journey. If you allow your mouth to drift without guidance, your life will drift without purpose. But if you set a guard over your words, you can steer yourself toward destiny even in the midst of storms. To control your mouth does not mean you suppress truth. It means you deliver it with wisdom. It does not mean you hide your feelings. It means you express them with maturity. It does not mean you never speak. It means you speak with intention. The real test of character is not how loud you can speak, but how disciplined you can be when silence speaks louder than words. Your mood is a silent force that can either build your day or break it before it even begins. How many times have you woken up with a heaviness, and that heaviness dictated everything else that followed? You looked at people differently, you responded to situations differently, you interpreted opportunities differently, not because the world had changed, but because your mood had colored the lens through which you saw it. Mood is powerful because it sneaks into the driver's seat without permission, and suddenly you find yourself going places you never intended to go. It is dangerous to let a temporary feeling control a permanent decision. You can't afford to let a moment of anger decide your future. You can't afford to let a season of sadness dictate your destiny. Your mood may be real, but it does not have the right to be in charge. Maturity is not the absence of emotions. Maturity is the ability to rise above them. You may feel anger, but you do not have to let anger speak for you. You may feel discouraged, but you do not have to let discouragement stop you. You may feel frustrated, but you do not have to let frustration decide what comes out of your mouth or how you treat others. Feelings are temporary visitors. They were never meant to become permanent residents in your life. If you do not manage your moods will manage you. They will tell you when to quit, when to lash out, when to give up, when to retreat. They will rob you of opportunities that discipline would have seized. Your mood is not just about what you feel on the inside. It is about what you project to the outside. People are watching, and whether you realize it or not, your mood becomes your message. If you are constantly moody, constantly negative, constantly shifting from one extreme to another, people will begin to see you as unstable, and trust will quietly walk out the back door. Doors don't just open for talent, they open for stability. People want to connect with those who can be consistent, who can carry themselves with dignity even when the storm is raging. Your mood can either be a bridge or a barrier. It can draw people toward you or push them away without you even realizing it. Think about how many blessings have been lost because of a moment of mood. Someone walked away from a relationship not because they weren't loved, but because they couldn't handle someone who allowed mood swings to govern their behavior. Someone walked away from a job not because they weren't capable, but because they allowed a bad day to convince them that their future was hopeless. Someone gave up on a dream not because the dream was impossible, but because their mood lied to them and they believed it. A bad mood can whisper louder than reality if you let it, but a disciplined spirit will not bow to emotions that rise and fall like the tide. To control your mood is to declare that principle is stronger than feelings. It is to decide that you will not let temporary storms dictate permanent outcomes. It is to understand that your destiny cannot be trusted to the volatility of emotions. Your mood is a thermometer, reflecting the temperature of how you feel, but your discipline must be the thermostat, setting the atmosphere regardless of how you woke up or what just happened. You have to choose whether your life will be dictated by the ups and downs of feelings or by the steadiness of values and vision. The mind is the battlefield where victories are won or where defeats are sealed long before life plays them out. What you allow to live in your thoughts will eventually shape the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you respond, and the way you see yourself. Nothing is more dangerous than a wandering, undisciplined mind because it becomes a breeding ground for fear, for doubt, for insecurity, for lies that disguise themselves as truth. The enemy doesn't always need to attack your body, your finances, or your relationships. If he can control your thoughts, he controls you. That is why you must treat your mind like the most valuable real estate you own, because what you let dwell there will determine what kind of life you build. Your thoughts are not harmless. They are architects designing the blueprint of your future. A thought that lingers too long becomes a belief. A belief repeated too often becomes a mindset. A mindset left unchallenged becomes a prison. Many people live behind invisible bars, chained not by what others did to them, but by what they continue to replay in their own minds. They live in the torment of I'm not enough, I'll never make it, things will never change, and because they think it, they end up living it. The mind has the power to transform mountains into molehills or molehills into mountains, depending on which voice you allow to echo the loudest. Guarding your mind is not optional, it is survival. You cannot feed on poison and expect to stay healthy. You cannot meditate on fear and expect to walk in courage. You cannot constantly replay rejection and expect to live with confidence. What you feed your mind determines what your spirit will produce. If you feed on negativity, bitterness, and comparison, you will become restless and defeated. But if you discipline yourself to feed on faith, on wisdom, on truth, you will carry a strength that no storm can easily shake. The mind must be trained daily, because if you don't discipline it, it will drift toward destruction. Consider how powerful the mind is in shaping even the smallest details of your life. When you wake up, your body follows where your thoughts lead. If your mind tells you the day is already ruined, then every step you take will prove it. But if your mind decides that no matter the challenge you will rise above, then your body will find the strength, your spirit will find the courage, and your actions will align with that decision. The mind is a compass. It sets the direction long before the feet start moving. But the mind is also a magnet. It attracts what it consistently focuses on. If you constantly dwell on failure, you will begin to attract self-sabotage. If you constantly meditate on fear, you will begin to attract limitations that keep you bound. But if you discipline your mind to think on possibilities, to see opportunities, to hold on to hope, then your actions will begin to pull those very things into your life. What you focus on expands. What you meditate on multiplies. What you allow in your mind eventually manifests in your life. This is why discipline of the mind is not about ignoring reality, but about shaping how you respond to it. You cannot control everything that happens around you, but you can control how you think about it. You cannot stop negative thoughts from knocking at your door, but you can decide not to give them a seat at your table. You cannot stop the storms from coming, but you can anchor your thoughts in such a way that the storm does not sink you. The true measure of strength is not in how much weight you can carry with your hands, but in how much pressure you can withstand in your mind without breaking.